Welcome guys. So this is going to be a sit down and sew with me slow style. If you're new to smocking, if you're overwhelmed, if you would like to do this, I am going to be walking. So I made this way back in the day. I want to do it again because this is a long time ago and I want to do it again. It was fun to do. I've gotten better, so I just wanted to have another round at it. Going to be a slow down sit and sew with me. I'm going to walk you through all the steps, putting it on this gorgeous number right here, Swiss voile, lace, like all the things, and we're just going to have some fun together. So grab your bishop and let's get going. Alright, welcome guys. So here we go. You got your bishop already smocked up. And what are we using to pleat? Well, I'm going to be using, you do you, it's sewing, you do you, all that goodness. I'm going to be using a size 7mm needle. It's kind of funny because, like I say, it's sewing, you do you. I've also got some snips here. And what fiber am I going to be using? I just had it. Here we go. Floche, if that's not a surprise to anybody. I'm going to use, I've got ecru and blanc here, white, otherwise known as white, and I'm going to be pairing that and kind of making it up as I go along. Here is our smocking plate. I'm going to be changing. I know the print job on here is just something special, but that's all right. This is my bishop from before I had kids, long before I had kids, probably 10 years ago. So my work has improved, as it should, over 10 years. And it was a fun thing to do back in the day, and I want to do it again. And I'm thinking with my colors, I've got like this kind of ecru-ish piping and neckband up here. So I think the majority of it, I'm going to go with ecru and then pop it with a little bit of this white. So I'm going to start off with the ecru. So with my needle, it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of folks, well, there are some folks who are very passionate about using, I think they call it a darner needle or a crew needle or whatever. And I tried that way back in the day when I was learning, because you got to start somewhere, so you listen to advice from others, and it was never the needle for me. I'm trying to thread this sucker. I didn't really know what needle to go to, but it was just like I was trying the needle that everyone smocks with. I shouldn't say everybody, but it's the largely accepted popular needle, and it just, I don't know, something about it, I was just like, there's got to be a better option. It's kind of like dating a guy and you're like, I don't know who else is out there, but you're not the one for me. That's kind of how it was. Alright, so this is a lining. I've got a tutorial on how to do this number. I've got actually two. One that you can do while you're making the bishop, and the other one you can do after the fact, because likely you haven't seen them, so maybe you have a stash of bishops that you'd like to put a lining into it. So I'm just going to attach the floche onto the back side. Make sure this is in focus. Anyway, so yeah, I'm just going to attach the floche onto the back side of this. I'm going to go through 2 pleats and then go through those pleats again, which gives me a loop. And I'm going to go through that loop twice. This cinches are on, and my tail has gotten caught in that process. I'm just going to pull it out and then trim her up. So I'm sending this. Did I do this on the wrong side? I did that on the wrong side, clearly. So I'm working on 4 hours of sleep. We actually got back from a trip yesterday evening. We went to Smoke Mountain National Park for the Labor Day weekend, and it was our first trip, our first overnight stay in our RV. We've done a couple day trips, and we have wanted to stay overnight in that RV for a while, but kiddos and life, and we are new to RV life. We still have young babies, and that was our first night. So it was a big milestone for our family. Alright, so if you look at this smocking plate, you can see there's this cable, there's some space, and then there's a cable stitch that goes around. How much space? It's sewing you to you, like pick a amount of space and go for it. I think I'm gonna be going down to maybe this orange row for me. Am I still in frame? Kind of. So that for me is 1, 2, 3 half spaces. So I'm going to be going down to this orange row and I'm just going to be doing the cable stitch. Couple things when you're smocking, and I'm going to talk like I'm talking to somebody who is brand new at this. You just want to go through the top portion of your pleat. So I'm going through maybe the first third of the pleat. It's not rocket science, don't overthink it, but you do, I would say you want to avoid going super deep like that. And the reason is if you go super deep like that, you can get pleats that aren't as plump. And when they aren't as plump, they just aren't as like luscious. They kind of just, I don't know, squeeze the life out of them. And so plump pleats is, you know, they're just luscious and lovely, and at least that's the general consensus, and I would have to agree. So the cable stitch, you're gonna go across with all stitches in smocking. You want to keep your needle horizontal to your pleating thread, or sorry, parallel, like collinear with your pleating thread. And then you just send it across and you cinch it down just enough until you get those pleats together. Again, with keeping them plump, another way to ruin the plumpness is to like pull, 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 and you just kind of squeeze the life out of them. You don't want to squeeze the life out of your pleats. So you just take your thread and pull it until it is just touching. Alright, again, not rocket science, don't overthink it. But yeah, so that's what we're going to do, above and below, so you can see this one, my thread is above my needle, and then the next one, so I cinch that down, the next one, my thread is below my needle. And we're going to continue that all the way around. Oh, so I realized that I didn't actually explain what needle I like to use. So I really like to use a size 7 millimeter needle. The size will vary depending on what I'm doing, and also the needle type will vary. But all of the needle types that I like, whether it's a millimeter, a sharp, a straw, a quilting needle, an in-between needle, there's a couple, you know, there's a handful of styles that I will go to, but they have something very similar in common, and that's that the eye of the needle is more or less the same width as the diameter of the needle. So what I'm saying is I don't like an eye that bulges out. And when you go to a crewel, is that how you say it? Crewel needle or darner needle. Oh my goodness. Those eyes, and like I said, to each their own. I'm not claiming to know anything about anything. I'm definitely not claiming to be an expert, but in my experience, my preference is I like an eye of the needle to be more or less the same width. I don't like it to bulge out. That's everything from smocking to making buttonholes to bullion stitches, shadowwork embroidery, anything that I do. I really like that eye of the needle just to be the same width. That way it doesn't interfere with what I'm doing. So that's the needle that's my general thought with needles. So anyhow, that's what I'm using, and we're gonna do this cable stitch all the way across. All right, there we go. So we are coming to the end of this first strand of floche. And I'm using floche, especially with, okay, well, I love floche. I love floche so much. It's my favorite fiber. But I would really recommend it with beginners. Well, okay, I would definitely not recommend the typical 3 strands of floss. I would not recommend multiple strands of anything. So floche is great as a great alternative. The 3 strands of floche is the typical way to to smock. And multiple strands of any fiber. So okay, here we are tying off. I'm going through, creating a loop, same thing as before, going through the loop twice and pulling tight. And now I'm going to trim up that tail and get another 1 strand of floche. So even though I would not consider myself a beginner at smocking, I would recommend 1 single strand of whatever fiber you are using as a beginner. It's a bonus that if you aren't a beginner, it just goes super fast compared to multiple strands of any fiber. The typical way to floss is to use 3 strands of floche, and I would not recommend that since multiple strands of any fiber is just a lot more difficult. So, if I can thread this, particularly when you are starting out, there's just lots to learn, okay? And when you have multiple strands, the issue is when you have multiple strands of any fiber, you're not only having to focus on, oh my goodness, hold on, let me just stop talking and thread this needle. There we go. Okay, so when you're a beginner, you're learning the stitches, you're learning how to do everything, and it complicates matter when you have multiple strands of any fiber. I'm not picking on floss. Floss is a great fiber. But when you have multiple strands of any fiber, you're having to keep all of those fibers untwisted and right next to each other, laying flat. And it's not a matter of it sewing you to you, because if you don't do that, then you have this whole twisted kind of hot mess. I mean, I guess if you like that, then that's your thing, but I hate to say, like, I'm always hesitant to be like, oh, you should absolutely do it this way, but if you don't keep things untwisted and the fibers laying next to each other and flat and all that stuff, then you've got this twisted look to your stitches, and they don't lay nice and flat. And like I said, I don't want to, like, it's hard for me. I get tongue-tied because when I say nice and flat, if somebody likes the twisted look, I don't want to imply that the flat way is the only nice way to do the stitches, right? Because I really, at the end of the day, believe in it sewing you to you. However, I personally, and I think the vast majority of people would agree with me, that when things aren't laying, if they're twisted up together and your stitches, so like if you have a stitch and your fiber's twisted within that stitch, it just looks a bit sloppy. And I don't mean to poke. If you like that look, go for it, but I think most of us try to avoid that look. And so some simple advice for beginners that I would have is to use 1 strand of any fiber. Now, the issue with using 1 strand of floss is it's pretty lightweight. Have I done it before? Yes. But the look that I was trying to achieve in that instance was like a smocking with lace type of look. So it's definitely on like the gentle, fragile side of life, and I would think that most people, if they want to go with 1 strand, want something a little bit thicker, and I would include myself in that. Like I said, the only time I've done it is to try to mimic lace. So when you're trying to do the regular look or whatever, gosh, I get so like tongue-tied trying to say like the regular look and the accepted way and whatever, because I really do believe it's sewing you to you. Okay, having said that, some recommendations when you're only doing 1 strand would be floss, because the width of floss is about 1.5 times that of floche. And you might be thinking, okay, it's only, 50% more or whatever, but it really does make a big difference. And it's also, the fibers of floche are not woven as tightly as floss, so you get this more like plump, spread out look. Another great alternative would be cotton or border, size, I would say like 20 or 25. Size 30 could work, but that's a smaller size. So there's 4 sizes of cotton border. There's 16, 20, 25, and 30. 16 is the largest and 30 is the smallest. You can think of it, it's similar to gauges, like, you know, gauges of metal wire or whatever, how when the number gets bigger, the diameter gets smaller, that inverse thing. So cotton or border is another great alternative. Cotton or border compared to floche. Floche is more like spread out and a flat look to it, whereas cotton or border is more round and it's tightly wound together. This is really good to test my speaking abilities. It's tightly wound together, but it's also a round, circular type look. I like cotton or border as well. They're just all, I like all the fibers. But the benefit of those two is you can get away with using one strand. If you're learning, you know, it's a great thing for beginners, like I said, because you don't have to twist it around. But if you know what you're doing, oh my gosh, you can fly through it. It is so much faster than 3 strands of floss or anything. I'm not picking on floss. It's so much faster than multiple strands of anything. You can just fly through it and good stuff, right? So where can you get these fibers? Well, I mean, floss you can get anywhere. Okay, you can get it from any arts and crafts store, like, you know, around the corner from your house. Walmart even carries it. Farmhouse Fabric carries it. But then Floche, well, Farmhouse Fabric also carries Floche, so if you're already placing an order with them, you might as well get it from them. But the thing with Floche, the issue with Floche is that it comes in a massive hank. They even changed the name, okay? So you buy a thing of floss or cotton or border and it's called a skein. Meanwhile, when you go to Floche, they call it a hank. The thing, I mean, it's enough fiber to last several years if you do typical a volume of sewing. Even I think I do a little bit above typical volume of handwork, and one hank will last me several years. So yeah, it's like a lifetime supply. The issue with that is that it's a little bit costly to get into it. Each hank is $8. So if you want to get a collection of colors, you can see how that adds up in a hurry. What I have done is I've done floche braids. And a floche braid are several colors together, and I try to like have a theme to the braid. So it might be a jewel tone, it might be back to school, it might be a pumpkin, or it might be a watermelon. And the idea is that you could take that motif, like a watermelon, and you get all the colors you need to do a watermelon. So you get the greens and the pinks and the white and the blacks, and that way you're getting a combination of colors and it's not costing you $8 a color. And then cotton or border, I also sell the skeins of those as well as Farmhouse. I don't think those are at the arts and crafts stores, but I could be mistaken. I don't think they are. At any rate, so yeah, if you're already placing an order with Farmhouse, go ahead and just add those to your order. And if you're placing an order with me, I thank you, and I hope you enjoy using those fibers with your smocking. Just gonna finish up this cable stitch here. So the little pop of white, I'm going to introduce something from this smocking plate. This original smocking plate, it came from Pinterest. So I'm going to introduce something that, well, it's not currently here because I'm introducing it. Oh my goodness, one day. Alright, so this is Blanc. And thread it, because clearly threading and talking, at least today with 4 hours of sleep. Oh my goodness, I did it! Look at that, maybe the coffee is kicking in. So what am I going to introduce? Well, I want a little pop of white. So I'm just going to introduce like a little mini trellis underneath this cable stitch. Same idea, we're going to pull our thread through until we have a little bit of a tail. And then put it through again, which gives us that loop, go around into the loop twice, and pull through. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go right underneath, so these stitches will be touching the stitches of this cable, and I'm going to go so through a stitch like to create a stitch like that, and then the next stitch will be down to this next half row or half space, whatever however you want to phrase that. So the next pleating thread, and we're going to do that all the way across. So again, we've got this stitch up here. This stitch is right underneath our cable stitch. They are touching, and then the next stitch is going to be down at this thread. How many threads to pleat up? How many rows? If my memory serves me right, I did 13 half space rows. And then as far as counting pleats, I do not count my pleats. Is it a bad idea to count them? Probably not. It's probably something that's good. However, I have never counted my pleats. Things have just worked out, and I feel like, why? You know what I mean? Like, if you want to count them, more power to you. But the reasons that I don't is because, well, first of all, you have to be accurate. So, you know, you're counting, I don't know however many pleats these are 100, 200 pleats. And if you're off by one, well, that kind of like defeats the whole purpose of counting. So, one, I don't really trust myself to be accurate or precise, whatever the correct word is for that. And the other couple of reasons is that the vast majority of the time, at least in my case, things just work out. So I'm pleasantly surprised with how many times it just works out, and whatever pattern you're doing, the pleats just happen to land with the stitches that you need. So it doesn't matter to count them anyways. The other side is that even when they don't work out, you just kind of make it work and it's all good and dandy. So unless something was being like judged, you know, like you're really in it or whatever, like I'm getting tongue-tied again, because again, in the back of my mind, I'm like, it's sewing, you to you, there's no right and wrong, and I really believe that. And especially with, you know, including this whole counting pleat topic, if you want to count them, of course, go ahead. I'm not discouraging them, I'm just answering the question that I've been asked. And with this being a beginner's video, I'm thinking that some of y'all have that question floating around your mind, if I count these pleats, and my answer is no. If you want to count them though, I'm not saying that it is right or wrong. It's probably a good idea, but again, you've got to be precise, because if you're off by one, well, that kind of defeats the whole point of counting. So yeah, to each their own, but that is what I do. We're gonna continue. I'm at least gonna continue this little trellis that I've introduced, my little pop of white here, all the way around. So if you want to introduce it with me, go ahead and do yours all the way around too. So I've gone ahead and if you remember back, if you look at the original, we've done the cable, we introduced this little trellis, and then I've gone ahead and I've started the trellis for this background, like the main section of the smocking. And I wanted to show it because I wanted to show this setup, particularly if you're a beginner, kind of like seeing where we're headed, I think is helpful. And then I will show the stitches like in progress. But you can see I chose to pair the upper part of this trellis with the lower part of the one from before, so like they kind of mirror each other there, and there, as opposed to having the upper. I'm gonna try to like be all proper over here and point, not with my finger. But if I had the upper here, then the lower would be here, so it would be a lower and it would be more space. And of course it's sewing you do you, but in my opinion it just looks a little bit more polished to have the upper and lowers kind of meet. So what does this look like now? Well, I've skipped one space, although I'm kind of looking at this and I'm like, maybe I should have skipped 2 spaces, like 2 half rows, so a full space. I don't know. It's there, and often when I have those feelings, I don't know where my needle went. That's a good question. I don't know, I suppose it will turn up. But often when I have those thoughts about, oh, maybe I should have done this, or maybe I should have done that, or whatever, if I second guess myself, I just keep going, and then it kind of like marinates and grows on me most of the time. And so by the time I'm at the end of the project, and I don't think that it's so much like I'm at the end of the project and so it's done and I'm not going to go back. I think it's more like it's done and it's all come together and it's a big picture sort of thing. So again, tying on, we're going through 2 pleats and then going through those pleats again to create a loop, and then going through that loop twice. And you can see I'm tying on where I tied off. So this was the like piece of floche that I just ran out of. This is obviously the new one that I just tied on to. So they're in between, like they're on the same pleats. And now I'm going to go between these pleats to send my needle to the right side of my work. That wasn't terrible, but usually you've got to align, there you go, just to kind of, now that you're seeing what you're doing, to come up. And to do this trellis, it's the same idea of the trellis that we did in the white, the one that we introduced. So you kind of go over and do a little stitch, and then go down and do a little stitch, again staying at that upper part of the pleat, about the upper third of the pleat, not pulling too tight. And you can use like your needle like that, or your thumb, whatever, to align the stitch there so it's below the other stitch. And this is going to be the background for the flowers that we're going to do, which is exciting. Bullion roses are something of like a mystical thing for a lot of people, and it's one of my favorite things to do, and everyone looks a little different, and I think that's okay. I remember when I was learning them, they were like, my mind was going to explode and I was doing them all wrong. And my fingers hurt, and I feel like over the years I've come down to a method that's worked for me. So I will share that with you. But yeah, first we've got to go across and fill in all of this trellis, whatever color. I mean, the whole thing is whatever you want to do. It's sewing you to you. I really, really, truly believe that. It's hard for me to put like instructions and give away colors and all of that, because I don't want to limit anyone's creativity. I don't want to be like, you must do it this way or whatever. But yeah, it's been a balancing act, because I know that when you're a beginner, or I don't know if it's a beginner thing or if it's a personality thing, but there are some folks who really want to know what I've done. They really would like an answer to move forward. And in those cases, I'm like, well, it's better for you to move forward and do something than for you to like be in this analysis paralysis situation. I can't relate, not to say that I am better or worse, because you know what, there are situations that I just sort of jump, okay? I just sort of dive. And that's not always the best case, because there's many situations I've gotten myself into, and then I wonder, how do I get myself out? So I'm not at all saying that I have the answers or that my way is better than, thinking it through and coming up with a good plan. Often, I don't know, maybe that way is better, but I just sort of jump and hope for the best. And when it doesn't work out, I'm like, oh crap, what do I do now? And I've got to pivot and turn and figure this out and figure that out. And I guess there's pros and cons to both, but all I'm trying to say is I don't have that experience, but if you do, it's all good. It's all good. We can all show up and just do the best that we know how to do, and that's all good and dandy. Man, that was a little bit of a tangent. So anywho, yeah, we're just gonna continue this until you've got all the rows done. Alright, so I've gotten to the place where I've done all the accrue. So I got the cable. If we go back to the original, there's the original cable. So I've got this little cable with the little white trellis, and then I've done the body work for the for like the rest of the trellis here. Now, how many to do? So if you look at the original, you can see here's the top. Sorry, there you go. You can see here's like the top row that starts. And so like there's one little diamond that's created, and then here's 2 diamonds, and then the 3rd diamond is where this bullion rose is. So you got 1, 2, and 3, and that allows you to have this arch. So you've got this little cluster of 3, 2, a center, 2 more, and then another cluster of 3. And like I said, that's 3 down. If you want to make a bigger bishop, if you need to have more smocking, width or whatever, for whatever reason, you could take those additional pleats and maybe make more of a gap, or you could do more of a body of trellis, or you could do a combination. Maybe it's a smidgen more of a gap, and then you have more body of trellis as well. And then what I would do, of course, it's sewing you to you, but in that case, I would take this whole arch and just shift her down. So then here you'll have your gap, you'll have just some blank trellis, and then your roses will start. Does that make sense? That's what I would do. Of course, like I said, I keep saying it, sewing you to you. And on that note, I'm looking at mine and I'm gonna add something else. I know it. But I'm really liking this Holy Crew white number. Don't mind my nails. I know they are dirty. I redid the flower beds outside my office this morning and I was wearing gloves. But even so, the gloves, like the dirt seeped in and here we are. It's fine. I washed my hands. I've done all the stuff. I don't know, it's fine. I've got other stuff to do than to sit down and do my nails. It's fine. Anywho, like I said, I'm really liking this Holy Crew white combination, so I want some more white. And in order to get me some more white, one way to do that is I'm going to do another row. Let's get a little bit more out of this. Another row from my bullion. So tying on, and then we're going to follow the previous, I say were, if you would like to do this, you could skip this of course, but if you want to add on, this is how I'm going to do it. So I'm going to go below, obviously below the first one, but it's just a smidgen below, right? You see that? So here's the next pleating thread. So I'm in between pleating threads. Here's that top one where this stitch is at. Here's the bottom one. So I'm in between pleating threads. And then my next stitch is going to go like in between the next, maybe a hair above. So maybe like a third of the way down. If you can imagine between this pleating thread and this pleating thread, breaking it up into thirds, I'm at the first third of the way down. Did I do that right? Oh, I didn't go over enough. Hold on. Sorry. It's coming to the end of my day, and things like counting get difficult. At the end of my day, I try to do all of my thinking, and well, I do all of my like hardcore thinking, but I have much of my life thinking this. But okay, so a third down, I do all that in the morning, and then I try to just float through the evening. Not evening, well yes, evening, and oh my gosh, I'm proving my point right here. Alright, so here we go, back up. And then over, so we're repeating the same trellis. Well, I'm repeating. If you want to join me, go right ahead. And that just gets a little bit more white. This would also be really pretty with, you know, 2 different shades of green, or pinks, or yellows. Ooh, yellows would be really fun. And then you would have the flowers on top of the yellows. That would be like a really fun spring cheerful number. So many different ways to do this, and it changes the feel and the whole vibe of everything. So I'm gonna go around in that same manner, so I have a little bit more blanc on this bishop. I'm actually sitting here thinking that after I do this row, I'm going to do another row of ecru, and then I'll have a sandwich of ecru blanc and another ecru. And then maybe I might take another thing of ecru up here and do another cable stitch. So I've got like a cable sandwich, or a trellis sandwich with cables. Ecru trellis, like blanc trellis, and then another ecru cable. That could be pretty. Like a vast majority of times with smocking plates, I make them up as I go along. So this right here that I have a smocking plate, you know, going off of from Pinterest, that's a lot of direction. Usually it's just a blank canvas, and I just let her go and see what happens. And it's all good. Like either direction is fun, and yeah, not getting too caught up with like you must do it this way or know everything that you're about to do before you do it. You can just do and just see what happens. And the more that you just do and see what happens, it's like a muscle. It just, not only do you get better at it, but you enjoy it, and it leads you places that you didn't know. It's just fun. So, alright, I think I'm gonna do that. Ecru, long ecru, and then another ecru up here. Go team. Alright, so where am I? So I haven't done the other cable ecru stitch that I talked about doing earlier. I'm a little bit hesitant to do it just yet, if I want to do it still or not, so I'm gonna go forward with the rest of the design and see if I still want that, because I kind of like the look of the ecru, the white, the ecru, and then white. And then down here, I did 2 rows of the white of the blanc instead of just, I had talked about doing 1 blanc and 1 ecru, but I did 2 blanc, so that's where I am. And now I'm at the point of putting in these bullions. So we've got a group of 3, a cluster of 3, and then 5, and then a cluster of 3, and then below the center we've got another one, right? So where to place it, it's really, you know, you pick up a starting point and then that's the pattern, right? So it's the starting point that's the critical, I mean, not critical, it's nothing to like lose sleep over or anything, but like that's really what we're talking about here when we're talking about where to place these things, is where do you want your starting point? Well, I guess, I don't know. Okay, so I guess there's 2 methods. It's either where do you want your starting point, or if maybe, so this bishop here closed in the back. So then this was my center front, and my center front had the clusters. So I think, personally, I mean, it's so new to you, but I think the center front should either land where a cluster is, or should be the center of one of the arches. I mean, it's, like I said, don't lose sleep over it if like that happens to be your center front, but I think it's cleaner if the center front is either the top of an arch or the cluster. So if you want to go that route, if your bishop is opening in the back, like this one did, this one opened in the back, then I would take the center front of your bishop and either place a cluster there or place the center of a arch and then create the pattern and go along that way and then come back and go along the other way, right? Mine is a little bit different because my bishop opens in the front. Mine has a front facing. So because of that, I'm more concerned with how the front looks, like the side portions, and less concerned with how the arches are lining up in the back. So what I'm going to do, I guess there's 2 things then, is do I want the front to come together as if one arch was broken up and then it comes together to like join the arch? I don't know, because is this space here, so it's not like it's coming together all that fluid, and I have this bit of lace here. So I think I'm just gonna go with a cluster here, and I'm gonna start it my cluster on this side versus this side, since I have the lace that's gonna overhang, so it's not gonna be as visible. Whatever's going on here is not gonna be as visible. And so I'm gonna start my cluster of 3 here, do my arch, and then do a cluster of 3. So how is this going to look? This is going to be, if you reference, let's re-reference this thing. We're going to have, and I'm really just gonna mark like this first one just to kind of like get my bearings, and then I'll know what I'm doing with my life. See, I don't want to put one right there. I want to put one here and there. The cluster is 2 up, 1 down. You see, 2 up, 1 down. So I've got 1, 2, and then 3. So that's my cluster of 3. And then I'm going to, from here, it skips 1. So this next space, that's just for leaves. So I've got a 3, I've got a leaf, I've got there's another one, and then this one is a leaf, and then this one here, I'm gonna put it right here, is where my my top flower is gonna go. And then that's gonna be another leaf, another flower, a leaf, and then back to this cluster thing. So that's more or less how it's gonna go. Once I have this one down, I can reference this one to do the other ones. It's the starting point of anything, right? That's the tricky kind of getting a feel for what you're doing, where you're going, and how things are whatever. Like, you just don't have any structures right now. So here we go. What colors am I going to use? Okay, so I'm gonna stick with these light colors. Here's the ecru and the blanc from when I was doing my smocking. I don't believe I'm going to use those for the flowers. I think I'm going to dive into these sort of colors. So I've got a very light pink, a more like baby pink sort of color, and then I've got two greens. This is the lightest pink that not pink, this is green. This is green. This is the lightest green that Floche's offered in, and then the next shade under is this green right here. And I'm not sure where my standalone, see, I just use the hank as they are because I do so much handwork, and it also just doesn't make sense for me to use a Floche braid that I've braided up and spent the time doing to use. So I generally don't use them unless I'm traveling or something like that. Anywho, so I'm using these colors. These colors are available in Floche braids though. So this is the Sweetest Rose. I've got a mini size of it and then a full size. So this is over a full hank since I have 4 colors. It's like 1 1/3 hanks or something in volume, and then this is, I don't know math, but yeah. So this is the Sweetest Rose, and these are the colors that I'm using. I want to say that I'm going to do, it's always the question, right? Do I take the center of the rose to be the darker part and the petals to be the lighter part, or vice versa? Here I did it vice versa. Do I want the darker part in the center or in around? I don't know. That's a good question. I think I want the darker part to be in the center this time. So I'm going to take 1 strand of Floche. Dun, dun, dun. I'm still using this size 7mm needle. And here we go. So I'm going to start here. I don't have any knot on the end of my thread. This is just an easy way to figure out where I am with my life. And so I'm tying on. And I'm going to be coming up. So I've come up just to the side of this pleat. You can see there's where my thread has exited the pleat. And then I'm going to do a similar position over here and go just next to where my Floche came out of, over there. See that? I'm going to turn my work so it's more convenient for my hands. And so I've got this little bite that I've taken from my pleats. Now at this point I'm going to do a bullion. It's okay, don't fear. We're going to wrap around. And we're going to do, I have found when you're doing the bullions in the center, it is better to err on the side of shorter than longer. And so we're just going to go like that, wrap around, pinch them with your fingers, and pull through. And so now we have 1 center there. And then with that little tug, make sure it's all secured down, and then we're going to put it back down. Now that's 1/2 of the center. So we're going to do the same sort of thing for the other half of the center. So we're going to come up just to the side. You see I have a tiny little space. That's for the placement of, when I come up the the second round. There's a tiny bit of space right there. So that's basically where I want to go. And then I'm going to go over here, and then that's that space that I left for this part right here. You see my needle's in that space. Make sure your needle is not piercing through your fiber. That will leave you to a hot mess in a hurry when you do the whole bullions and pull through. It will not look as pretty, and it'll just kind of, don't do that. So we focus, we go around. Another thing to keep in mind, to be careful of, is that you don't want a space. So your first loop down here at the, maybe I shouldn't use scissors, maybe I should use a needle. So your first loop down here, you don't want a space here. You want the loop to just be continuous, like no gap, no slop in that fiber, because that'll lead you to a bullion that's less than polished. And again, with the bullions that are in the center of the rows, I have found it is better to be on the side of shorter than longer. So here we are with our center, the other half. And then you can send that to the back. Now, I would recommend continuing with your fiber that's already been tied on. It'll lead you to fewer knots, so the back will be more polished, which will allow you to be also more efficient with your usage of the fiber, so that you're not tying on and cutting off and tying on and cutting off. That's wasting fiber. So I'd recommend going ahead and doing more centers. Just go along and do more centers, and then come back with the color. I mean, this is if you're doing a different color for the petals, right? If you're doing the same color for everything, you could just go ahead and do the petals. But if you're doing two different colors or whatever, multiple different colors, then go ahead and do all of the center color now, and that just makes better use of everything. Efficiency, it's good stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that until I run out of this fiber. And up next are the petals. I don't know why I just sung that. I'm so excited to do the petals with you guys. Are you excited? Alright, so I've used up that piece of floche, and I realized that I should have taken out my pleating threads before starting this. So if you haven't taken out your pleating threads, if you were wondering why I didn't take out my pleating threads, yes, go ahead, take them out. There's no reason for us to put all these bullions on top of the pleating threads and then cinch down those threads even more. I'm gonna leave these two up front just in case I want to put that cable stitch. It's not necessary. I mean, I have the structure of that, but I'm just gonna do it because I don't know, I just am. So yeah, go ahead and take out your pleating threads. You may come across, generally speaking, they come out pretty well, but you know, you get to those situations where your needle and the thread have crossed paths, and so you've gone through the thread, and you know, what am I trying to say? It's a good question. Here's an example. I'm pulling on it and it's not going. So what do you do in that case? You need to find the spot. What I found the best method to do is to find the spot where your needle went through the thread. Because what's happened? It's not coming out because you've pierced the thread when you were smocking, like, so you kind of pull at it. But it's not coming out because you pierced the thread when you were smocking, and now you've got to find the spot where the floche or whatever you're using to smock has gone through the pleating thread. Is it on the back here? Maybe it's that knot. So what I found the best thing to do is to trim on either side of that point, which means you got to find the point. So you can go over here, up, see that one? So my point was over there because I just trimmed at it, and sure enough, I'm pulling at this side and it's not really wanting to come. So you trim at the other side of that, maybe grab some tweezers because now it's pretty small, and you go that route. Let me trim off these. I hope that makes sense. I also hope that the camera or the microphone's not really picking up this macro lens. It is a noisy beast. Oh, there's another one. You can see I'm pulling on it, and it's not moving from there. So let's go back over here. So that's free. So it's this area over here. Yep, it's that area right there. So let me trim her down. Maybe go on this side. That loosened up, that loosened up. And there it goes. So there's the other side out. Here's this side out. So I basically am trimming on either side of where the piercing happened. And then it wiggles through and you're good to go. So yeah, take out your pleating threads. It's much easier to do when you're not stuffed into a little space with a camera and a big old microphone and trying to keep things in frame. So I'm gonna continue this off camera. Alright, so now I've done the center of these roses, and now I'm going to take this lighter pink so I can do the petals. There are 3 petals to each rose, and here we go. There's my flush. I'm gonna go to the back of this and tie on, just like we've been doing with all the other ones. Do the loop thing, go through the loop twice, and pull tight. So where am I starting? Well, I like to do, when I'm doing a 3-petal thing, I like to start, well, I really always start up in this corner, but when this is the spacing. Okay, so I'm starting up in this corner. You can see my needle, this thing will focus. Alright, so there's my needle up in the corner. I'm going to pull that out, and I'm going to go about 180-ish. So I'm going to go down to this bottom corner, and my needle's going to come out just to the side of where it went in. It's not piercing through my fiber, it's not piercing through that flush, but it's just to the side. So there's what my needle looks like. So I'm going to take my needle then with my finger kind of bracing it, and now I'm going to wrap. And now with the petals, more wraps is better than fewer wraps, as opposed to what we just did with the center of the rose. With the center of the rose, you don't want to push the length. It kind of just like bumps up and doesn't look as polished. But on the flip side, when you do the petals, and when you're wrapping these, you want them to be, I mean, not loosey-goosey, but not super tight. You see how they are moving along this needle? You do not want them to be super tight. But yeah, you want more wraps than fewer wraps. The length, like, because they will squish together. Meanwhile, if you don't have enough, because they do kind of squish together, then it doesn't look as plump. Those pleats don't look as plump. So make sure your pleats, you can see how I've held them with my fingers, like my forefinger and my thumb. And if your tail starts to kind of bind up, just do that number. It'll go through like this. Now from here you can let go, so don't have a panic attack. It's all good. But you do want to take the bottom right here where my tail is. You don't want it to be up like that. You want it to be in the direction of pull for that bullion. So you may need to adjust your fabric as I'm doing, and take that. You want it to be down like this. Put your thumb over the whole thing and start to gently tug on it. You can see now it's starting to cinch down. You may need to adjust your fabric some more. It's really helpful if you don't have a big old camera in the way, but that's fine. And you just keep cinching her down until you got something like that. Now, I like to send my needle more this direction, which it just continues to pull that petal around as if it was like a, in real life, like curves around into the center. So there's that one. Now the second one comes up. I mean, it's not like a hard and fast rule here, but it comes up somewhere around there. Somewhere around there. Pull through, again about 180-ish degrees. And then you want this to go right next to, without piercing through your fiber. That's actually too much of a gap. You see, that's a little bit too much of a gap, in my opinion. Alright, that's better. So my needle is right next to that fiber. And so we're going to repeat that step. We're going to take the needle and brace it with our like the index finger. This is the way I like to do it. Brace it with my index finger. Go around again. Do not wrap super tight. That was a massive mistake that I made when I was learning bullions, is I wrapped the sucker so tight that my fingers, by the time I had done a number of flowers, they were raw, they were red, they were angry at me. So, and the bullions did not look as good, because when you pull it through and it's super tight, it just becomes a hot mess, you know? You want it to glide, you want your needle to glide through easily. If it doesn't glide, then it tugs at your fibers and it becomes this hot mess in a hurry sort of deal. So we've wrapped it a number of times, probably around 20 or so. I wasn't counting, but I did film it for y'all, so if you wanted to count, it's there. But I remember I've done a number of these videos and I've gotten comments of all sorts, and some of the comments are like, oh my god, that was 40 wraps. And I was like, yeah, welcome to the world of bullions. They take a lot of wraps, generally speaking. So if you're sitting there and wondering if you've done 20 wraps, if that feels okay, yeah, that probably is. So you can see there's our second focus. There's our second petal. Of course, they never look as good on camera as they do when I'm not on camera. Such is life. But when you pull that and it goes around, it makes such a big difference. So I don't like to put my needle, like if I were to put my needle right where this ends, it would just kind of go off, right? Meanwhile, if I take my needle and I put it way up here, then it's going to cause that petal to really wrap around and give this lovely curvature shape, which you will see once my camera focuses. Something like this. And then for the last and final one, bringing that up. So I like to bring it up somewhere around where the other ones cross. So you can see the other ones are overlapping here. So my needle is coming up somewhere around there. And then this is what I've found the key to having a nice curvature for this, is I bring it just beyond where the start of that first bullion was, which happens to be about 180-ish degrees. So, you know, 180, 180, 180, with some overlap, works out to 360. That's smocking math for you right there. Bullion math for you. That looks about right. So, thumb and forefinger, holding those wraps in place. And if you're feeling a little bit of resistance, maybe you got them a little too snug, just loosen her up. So just take this top thread, give it some more slack, distribute the slack along. It should glide out of your needle easily. Make sure to adjust things so that way when you start to pull, the bottom thread is in the direction of the pull. That will lead you to a hot mess in a hurry if it's not in the direction of the pull. It'll just like pull against where it wants to go and it just sort of explodes on you. So here we are, and once again I'm gonna pull on that sucker and send it a ways not a ways away, but you know, a little bit of a way, 1/8 of an inch or whatever, which will have a curvature around. And there's a bullion rose. That's pretty. I love bullion roses in floche. I think floche really takes the cake when making bullions, in my humble opinion. So to tie her off, I mean, if I had more thread left, I would continue to use it, but bullions take a lot of fiber, so that's all that was available for this. So here's what I was talking about before. Don't mind this. This is the lining. I have a separate tutorial on how to do a lining for my bishop, and I've just pinned the lining out of the way as I'm doing the embroidery work. But here's what I was referring to before when I was saying that it's the first arch that you have to really think about, and then the other arches you refer back to the first one. So what I mean by that is that, look at this first arch, right? We have our cluster, and this doesn't matter if you started at the edge or in the center or whatever. It's just once you have the first one, no matter where it is, this will work. So you have this, you know, you got this cluster, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we have another cluster of 3. And then it repeats. So as we repeat, look at this first one here, right? I just follow over. You think of it as a grid. So I've followed it over, so it's the same on the same row. And then if we can kind of look at these like columns, I've got one space in between where this guy is and this guy, right? One space, so one space. And then again, now that I've got that guy placed, I'm one space over. See, one space over. And then this guy happened to be, he just landed in a little, like in the little bottom of the trellis, whatever. He's not like in an actual thing, but that's all good. It's all good. It'll still be fine. And so again, this guy's in the little bottom of the thing. How I look at smocking plates, if I use one, I keep talking about it's rare that I use one, but when I do use them, I think of them as like a road map. Okay, so if you're going somewhere, you're not exactly sure where you're going, then yes, you may want to have this. It may, spark your creativity. If you're just like lost, you get a road map out on how to get somewhere. Okay, and then once you've been driving for a while, once you're comfortable with the town you live in or whatever, you start to learn the landmarks. You start to learn little shortcuts, or maybe you prefer to drive on the highway, or maybe this road during the morning or that road during the afternoon. Heck, maybe there is a blockage, or like a detour, construction, maybe there's a collision, something of that sort, and you need to go a different route. And so that's how I think of smocking plates. So it gives you a roadmap, but then sometimes, it's something like this, you may have to detour a little bit, and it's all good and dandy. So yeah, it's a grid, it's a map. Once I'm done with the flowers, we are going to be doing the leaves. Y'all excited? Oh, I hope you guys have been enjoying this sit and sew. Oh crap, I didn't hit record on this thing. Anywho, if you've been enjoying this, please hit like. I hardly ever say that. I'm going to say that and see if it helps this video out. Thanks. This has been a public service announcement. So here we are doing the leaves, and the idea with the leaves is that they're basically going to connect these arches that we have going on. So you can kind of do them in whatever fashion you want, but how I've been doing them is 2 leaves on either side of these roses. So the 2 leaves on this side will point to the rose, the rose that preceded it, and then the leaves on the other side will point the other direction. To make the leaves, we're going to do the lazy daisy stitch. So you're going to pull your needle up, go in close to where you came up. You technically could go through the same hole if you wanted to. It's a different look. I do both depending on my preference and just like how I want things to look. And then you have your thread under your needle and pull through and then send it down on the other side. I am going to show that again on this side. So got the 2 leaves on our first side, and now coming up, going through either through that first hole or really close to it. If you space it out a little bit, it's a different look to the leaf. You can try it and see which one you like. Like I said, I do both, and depending on what I'm feeling. So coming up in between, and I'm only going over a little bit, like one pleat, right? These leaves, I'm always amazed with leaves how they really just frame the flowers, and a little bit goes a long way, in my opinion at least. It's so new to you. Again, coming up, I've got a smidgen of a space on that one, and I'm pointing this leaf slightly down towards the flower that's coming up, and there we go. Got the thread on the bottom and going on the other side of the thread to secure that in place. And that's how we're doing the leaves with all of these. Alright, so now I'm adding French knots just to give a little bit of depth. You can see I've started doing them on this side, and I've settled on doing one in between, there we go, and I've settled on doing one in between each rose. I did two, where was it, right here, I did two, but I think that's too much, so I went back just to doing one, and you can see the difference. Here I've done them, right, versus there I haven't. Look at the difference. Just one French knot in between each rose. Here's where I stopped. And doesn't that just give a really nice polished look? So this is the darker green that's in the Swedish rose braid. We did the leaves out of the, or I did the leaves at least because it's so new to you. But how many times can I say that in one video? So I did the leaves out of the lighter green, and now I'm doing the French knots out of this darker green. So if I get another strand to show you how to do a French knot, if you don't know, of course, where did my needle go? There you are, you sneak. Okay, so, and we are getting quite a back now with all of this embroidery and, you know, whatever. So, definitely enjoying this idea of the lining. And even though I've done this lining out of organdy, which is obviously sheer, it just gives like a little bit of a polish, like, you know what I mean? Kind of just a once over. It's kind of like when you wear, you know, lip balm or something, like you can still see your lips underneath, but it just gives a little bit of a polished, I don't know. So to do a French knot and to do them on pleats, even if you know how to do a French knot, maybe you're just a little nervous doing them on pleats. So I like to keep them on top of the pleat, so I'll choose to come up on the top of the pleat as opposed to like in the valley. I would recommend staying away from in the valley because your French knots will just disappear. So okay, let me do that again. So you've got your needle, you've got your thread. Now you're going to wrap around once and around twice. So you've got something like this. Again, you're keeping it on top of the pleat, and you're pulling it tight with this. I mean, I'm right hand diamond it, so I'm using my left hand. Oops, I would imagine that if you are left-handed, you would use your right hand to pull it tight. I don't actually know. So here we are, pulling it tight. However it looks when it is pulled tight at this stage is how it's gonna look when it's drawn in. So if you're not happy with it at this point, take your needle out and rewrap until it is something that you're happy with. It's not going to get any better once you pull through. But yeah, just pull through, and there you have a French knot. And then, like I said, I'm just, you know, of course it's so new to you, but I'm just doing this once in between, and I'm finding it just rounds things out and gives a little bit of depth and some more color, and I'm really enjoying it. And then when I get down to the trio, I'm actually doing 3. So I'm doing one kind of like off to the side, off to the one side, and then I'm doing the second one somewhere down around the center of that rose, but it's definitely not precise. And I kind of like that it's not precise, you know, it's kind of like just more authentic, and you know, It's not like you go through nature with perfect symmetry. And then I'm finishing up this little trio of roses with a third French knot on this side. And then I'm going back to just the one French knot up here. This is one of my favorite smocking patterns, and I'm really happy that I've gone back to it. I have another idea up my sleeve when I am done with these French knots. So I know I just keep building and building, and at some point you've got a collar done, because at some point, you know, less is more, and like it can be too much and whatever. Of course, that falls into the whole "it's sewing, you do you." Betsy Johnson's version of "it's too much" is way different than Dior's version, which is way different than, I don't know, name somebody else. We all have our own style, and that's all good and dandy. It makes the world go round, all the variety, and we can, you know, take bits and pieces from each other and get inspired and add our own spin to it, and then that goes around in a circle, and the more the merrier. And that is not to say that we were copying each other or stealing or anything like that. We're just, ideas go around and around, and maybe you forget about something, or maybe you see 2 or 3 ideas and you think, well, if I take, you know, a portion of that and a portion of this and a portion of that, now you have something completely new, but you were inspired. So it's not like you've copied and pasted, you've just taken and expanded, or taken and chopped up and put back together in a different way. I think all of that is such fun, and it keeps, sorry, I didn't realize I was not in frame. It just keeps things interesting, you know? And frankly, when people are like, oh, blah, 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 you copied, I mean, it's just, one, I'm like, do you not have more to do with your time? And 2, this is fashion. Like, that's part of fashion. That's part of there's this interesting balance with fashion where, like, sure, there's some innovation, but then really when you boil everything down, when you boil the innovation away, you've got these basic core things. And so I think at its base, nothing is really new. It's all been done or been seen to some degree. Do you know? And so it's a matter of, I mean, think about food. What hasn't been done? What hasn't been seen? You know? So you could have different approaches and different things. That doesn't mean that you're copying and pasting. Alright, I only have one arch left to do. Look at this. So this is the arch that doesn't have the French knots. But look at all of these arches. Aren't those so pretty with just one French? It's just, right? Rounds it out. I'm really excited for the next part. I think it's going to make it pop even more. So the one thing that we haven't done on this is to put something in the center. See the arch, and then they have a bullion rose, which is what I did 10 years ago. But I'm looking at this and I'm going, I just want a little bit of sparkle and stuff. And so I ended up putting, if my camera will focus, there we go. I ended up putting some beads up here for just a little bit of sparkle. Like I skipped 2, and then I put a bead and skipped 2, like of the little end trellis things. And now to put something here, I mean, it would be pretty, I think, without anything here. But if you want to put something there, of course, you could do the bullion rose. You could do a little, like a bullion rosette, like a, not rosette, what do you call it? A bud, like a little bud guy. Though, because I want a little bit of sparkle, I'm going to use these little sequin beads. These are like a mother of pearl sequins. I've gotten them from Farmhouse Fabrics. They come in 2 sizes. This size right here that you see is the tiny, tiny size, whereas it's probably like 3/16 of an inch. And then they have one size that's, well, it's larger than this. I want to say it's about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3, it's something like that. So I'm just doing 1 stitch, and that is that. I hope y'all have enjoyed this and learned some stuff. Doing these slow sit down and sew with me type deals. Let me know if you like them, like the video if you like them. If you have any questions, of course, put them down in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them. As always, I appreciate y'all for watching, and I hope to catch y'all next time.